taught by these fundamentalist jihadist imams in these special schools that are supported by the CIA. So across Central Asia, it's highly dangerous weaponization of religious hatred.
Yeah,
it's like a replay of the Crusades in reverse, where the West is actually creating the Islamic crusade counter crusaders.
Fascinating. I mean, it's horrible, but it's fascinating. Why is it, do you think, that many of these people are willing to play ball, and why is it that they are not seeing through this fact that they're being used in a larger plot, do you think? Is it too difficult? These are a lot of young people, you said?
Well, these are a lot of young people. They're even handing out Qurans in German language on the streets of Frankfurt, where I live, and all around the major cities of Germany. And they're handing them out to German kids who are unemployed. They're kind of without direction in their life. They come from a certain strata of society where they can easily get marginalized. And then they're wooed into these special religious schools run by a man who's very tightly connected with the CIA, named Fethullah Gülen, a Turkish imam, if you will. And he runs a worldwide network of these schools that are recruiting these kids. And then they send them off to Syria and different other places to get combat experience. And they play on all of the psychological vulnerabilities of young people.
So the West is using this, the religion. We can see the conflicts in Europe and in the US kind of in the larger extent. But what do you think, William? What will happen if we consider the massive influx of Islamic immigration into Europe specifically? Are you saying that this is a situation that has been designed, basically?
I think so. I think I in particular have been looking at Fethullah Gülen. He is one of the least understood figures of political Islam, or some people call it Islamic fascism, because that's in fact what it is, where you just have total control over the lives of young people in these schools and so forth. But the Fethullah Gülen was hustled off to the United States with the help of several very leading figures of the CIA, including Graham E. Fuller, back in 1999 in exile from the Turkish military because he was accused of plotting against the institutions of the Turkish state. So they have been systematically using that power to put Gülen disciples, cadre, into the police. They've been arresting generals and military leaders who have a tradition since Kemal Ataturk in the 1920s of being the guardians of the nation. That's an up and down history, but by and large, they see themselves as the guardians of the nation against, a subversion of Turkish institutions. Former head of Turkish intelligence who wrote a book about exposing Gülen's takeover of these institutions. He was put in prison for that. Leading journalists, 104 of the most renowned Turkish journalists have been put in prison. Groups like Amnesty International have even protested, but to very little avail. Gülen movement is using their presence in Europe. They're very clever about it. They say, we're the good guys. We are taking kids off the street. We're creating football teams so they don't get into trouble and da-da-da-da. But in reality, what they're doing is selecting the best and the brightest of these young kids and then sending them off to be trained in Turkey and indoctrinated and later off to places like Syria or Libya or what will you. And that's a very dangerous development. They're also now, they've changed their tack and said, let's build our presence, let's build our schools inside Europe. Let's not see ourselves as Turkish visitors who are ultimately going back to our homeland. We're here in Europe. This is our home. So let's build our mosques and our Islamic schools here. And of course, that creates friction with people who live in these countries when they refuse to, assimilate the culture of Denmark or Sweden or Germany or what will you.
Yeah.
It's a political movement that's highly, highly dangerous.
Well, indeed, exactly. So these are, people like Gülen are kind of middlemen who are there to provide, be in the supply line, if you will, then of young people who are manipulated by this and the religious thought and everything else to be part of this manufactured conflict, basically.
Yeah, and so many young people are it's almost like an aphrodisiac to be part of something powerful, to have an identity. Young kids handing out the Quran on the main street of Frankfurt, they're very well dressed